This is The Therapist's Couch with Virginia Corbett, licensed counselor, where professional insight supports personal growth. Join us for authentic conversations that inspire growth, healing, and hope. Welcome back to The Therapist's Couch. In this episode, Virginia and Anna move beyond survival mode and discuss how to actively curate a life of peace. They break down the 5 pillars of calm, from organizing your physical space to cleaning up your digital feed. And they share practical ways to protect your energy from the noise of the world. Let's begin.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I am Virginia Corbett, and this is Anna Edwards, and we are going to continue our series on the Calm Code today.
Yes, I'm very excited.
I am too, because, we have hit some things like survival mode and boundaries, but today we're going to talk about how to curate a life that enforces that, how to curate a life that kind of keeps your calm.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So just to kind of get us started with this, section of our Calm Code, what are the areas that you're hoping to focus on today?
Well, today there's really 5 pillars that we're going to address. The 5 pillars of, building a life that has that calm. One is the physical calm space. The second one is that relational calm space. The third is a digital calm space, which is getting more and more important in life today. And the fourth one is a calendar, kind of the pace of your life. And then lastly, little micro rituals, which we can do to enforce that calm.
Awesome.
Lots of good categories, I think.
Definitely. And definitely, I feel like in some of the ones that you've named, like things that, people can actually use to continue to create their calm.
Mm-hmm. And we've already talked about the survival mode. Mm-hmm. We've already talked about the boundary mode. But today we're going to talk about curating the environment. So let's just get started with that.
So when you're working with clients, where do you kind of, start with some of the pillars that you've mentioned?
Well, with clients, it's usually quite a while before they get to the point where they're really building things into their life. Mm-hmm. It's important to learn how to, have your toolbox, your anxiety toolbox, and start to keep all those calm, have methods for scaling down your anxiety. And it's important to, start to have relationships that have good boundaries, so you can not have all the noise in your relationships to constantly be putting you on edge. And by the time you start really looking at your life, you've done a lot of work.
Yeah. Because boundaries are hard.
Boundaries are hard.
Yeah.
And boundaries are choices. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have them. You don't have to make that choice. And sometimes people choose not to put the boundary there. Right. And that's okay. That's okay. No shade. You don't have to put a boundary in your life that you don't want to. And, a lot of times with clients, the decision to put a boundary in or not, because some relationships are like, I know this relationship puts my life on end, but I choose to let that happen.
Mm-hmm. I like when you said no shade. I feel like that's important, right? Creating a space where, someone's not going to feel judged. And I do agree. I think it's a very personal decision. And I think for everyone, what the, impact of that can look very different. So it has to be your own personal decision.
Well, and I think that's what good therapy is, holding people's feet to the fire for their decisions, but letting them make their decision in the first place. We're not here to make decisions in people's lives, but we're here to help them make decisions on what decisions they want. Yes. Does that make any sense?
I think so, yeah.
How do you do it?
Honestly, again, I do feel, making sure that I continue to verbalize, it is very, very complicated. And I think making sure that, one, I'm creating a space where, we're kind of just exploring what does it look like to hold this boundary? And then also, too, what does it look like without it?
Yes. Yes.
And I think it's very important to see both sides or see both possibilities and really assess what can you, what is your capacity basically for, because it's work and it's hard to maintain healthy boundaries and set healthy boundaries, and it's work and it's hard to not, right?
Yeah, choose your heart.
Choose your heart. Exactly.
Yeah. I think boundaries in relationships are a little bit like rehab. Sometimes a third time's a charm. Sometimes you end up, you make those choices, you fall off the wagon, you make the choice, you fall off the wagon, and then you're like, okay, I can't live with what it looks like when I'm not doing this.
Right.
So sometimes people put the boundary in place. It's a constant effort. And then at some point they're like, okay, I'm serious. This boundary has got to be part of my life. And this has got to be part of how I'm going to curate my life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start with the first one, that physical calm space. And that's something, honestly, I work at that a lot in my own life, of having a physical calm space in my home and in my office.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you do for that space or have in those spaces?
Well, my space is right by my front window, and when it's not cold, I open the window and let the birds sing to me, and I have that nature space. I have my comfortable chair, and I have a little blanket, and and I have a devotional there, and just kind of have a nice space that I can just, when I sit there, I know it's a safe, comfortable space that I can. My anxiety level goes, just drops when I get in that space right away, because I've done it so many times.
That's beautiful. I love that. Definitely sounds like even your physical body is so used to, it's signaling when you go there, right? Like, okay, I can feel safe. I can feel calm. I love that.
Absolutely. And that's one thing you and I have talked a lot about is wellness rooms, and I think that's trending in psychology and in therapy, and creating a wellness room.
Definitely. I just love it. I think it's so cool. And again, I think it could be very personalized, right? So really trying to, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, right? Like maybe it's a super soft blanket, or maybe it's a comfortable chair. It doesn't have to be anything, like I said, anything crazy. But I do think being intentional, like we've talked about in the past, and just really trying to make sure that mind and body kind of know what we're trying to do. We're trying to create our calm. So,
but there's the grounding. There's the physical grounding, but there's also the taking your shoes off and walking on the earth. There is the soft lights. Red light therapy is really having a lot of research, and that's very good for us. Full light the full spectrum lighting for seasonal affective disorder. There's the sound, a lot of sound baths and sound therapies having, people are really noticing the benefits of that too.
Definitely. I'm a huge fan of the sound bath for sure. Definitely a great way to create calm.
And in our safe space, in our calm space, sometimes it's just about visual order, just ordering things so we don't. I had a client one time, and she used sticky notes, and she'd leave things out to remind her of all the things she needed to do. And it was really hard for her to relax in her space, because everything was a reminder of what she hadn't done.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, I feel like that would maybe make me feel a little overwhelmed. But again, what works for someone else is...
there's that scene, old movie, that Romancing the Stone. Have you ever seen that?
I have not.
It's funny. It's Kathleen Turner, but she's a writer, and she keeps leaving sticky notes all over her. There's billions of sticky notes all over her apartment, and she's looking all over the apartment in one of the scenes, and she doesn't have any Kleenex. So she goes to the refrigerator, and there's a sticky note that says buy Kleenex, and she takes it and blows her nose on it. So visual order, and sometimes getting our place in order, can be really important.
Yeah. And finding a good system that works for you, I think. So.
And the next pillar is relational calm. And that's what you and I do a lot of work with.
Definitely. So when you're starting to work on relational calm, and I know there's probably, like you said, a lot of work that happens up until that point, how do you, I guess, kind of start or initiate that work with a client? Like, where do you
Where
take
did we
them?
go for relational calm?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times people have to realize, it's that kind of lobster in the pot. You get used to how hot it is and you don't realize,
Yeah.
that you're boiling. A lot of times in a relationship, we let things get out of hand slowly. And then, so a lot of times it takes a while for a client to realize, hey, this is not okay.
Yeah. Death by a thousand cuts kind of a thing.
Yeah. How about you?
I feel like one of the things that I do is almost kind of like slyly trying to help them identify, like, hey, it feels like you don't really like that, right? Or like, it feels like maybe that didn't make you feel super great. Because it's important to me that they are identifying it, the client is identifying it on their own.
Yeah.
Because that's how you get maybe like the motivation or the strength to start to verbalize those boundaries or those expectations.
Well, and one thing with relational calm and kind of, dovetailing with what you're saying is a lot of times when you start to realize your value, you realize, wait a minute, I'm more valuable than this and I shouldn't be treated like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you the courage and the energy to change something
For
in
sure.
a relationship that maybe you've accepted something for a very long time that truly isn't okay.
Right.
So in relational calm, in that pillar, regulating people, regulating our relationships, the communication tones, how we talk to people and what the tone is and how they talk to us, the connection, how we connect with people, that's important too.
Definitely. And I think just even having awareness of that, of like making sure that because it's not just, okay, I do this and I implement it. It's constantly checking in. Relationships are, I won't say like always work, but kind of,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
it's all the little things. It's every day. It's every interaction. And I think, maybe there's kind of this expectation that it's not like once you found your person and whatever, but it's like, no, the work still continues.
The work does still continue. And even in the best of relationships, it's, I think that's maybe what's surprising, having been married a very long time, that, you always have to work at it.
Mm-hmm.
You always have to be updating and changing and checking in. And, just that idea that, oh, someday I'm going to be able to rest on my laurels. In my experience, that doesn't happen in relationships. It doesn't happen in jobs either very often, but, they talk about resting on your laurels and I'm going to get to do this thing and then I'll just be able to relax.
Right.
And darn it, if that isn't one of the biggest lies, I don't think we get to rest on our laurels. And then there's relational noise. Like some relationships in our life stop us from being our best self.
Those are tough. That is tough I feel like, to navigate, because that's a clear sign that, you got to work towards change in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes that can be really heavy.
Yeah, it can be really heavy, because sometimes if a relationship drags you down or stops you from being your best self, that's okay for a period of time. But do you really want to do that forever?
No, and I think time is so precious too, right? And so I love the saying, like, every day is a gift. And I think when you look at it that way, or when you can, that's maybe an approach that I take with my clients, is like that mindset shift or that reframe of like, let's look at this a different way. And it's going back to what you said earlier, like, because you deserve better, or you deserve to have your expectations met. And obviously within reason, but I do think, to your point, if someone is holding you back or bringing you down, that's when it kind of comes the time of like, we got to do something here.
Or make a decision.
Right.
Because you can decide that's okay.
Definitely.
You can decide that's okay. And so you don't have to do anything, but being honest with yourself about the consequences of what you're doing, I think is important in that position. Now, the next one, I know this is one that you like, is digital calm. Like, how do we make our digital space be calm in our lives, or a calming influence in our life?
So I feel like this is something that is continuing to be researched. And I really feel like it's important to notice that there's more and more studies that have come out and said, with like the doom scrolling, as it's called, right? The more and more that we doom scroll, it's kind of our brain is becoming used to the anticipation of like when you're gonna happen upon something that gives you that, feel good.
That rush.
Yes, exactly. And so like you could be scrolling and maybe it's like, okay, this one's not that interesting or this one's not that interesting, and then you get one where it's like really funny or something that you're super interested in, and you get that rush. What you're actually doing to your brain in the long term is you're actually damaging your brain's ability to regulate your emotions, because it's that anticipation of when am I gonna find that next big rush, like you said. So I would definitely say putting time limits, right, on when we are, even just on your phone in general, phone, tablet, computer, whatever, putting limits on that, everything in moderation. And I also think too, being very cognizant of what is the media that you're seeing, and if
curating your feed.
Yes, like so, if there's something that maybe makes you feel not so good, or as a reminder of a negative experience, like put limits on that, right? Like if that's not something that you want to consume, trying to have a little bit more control over it. And I know it's not always possible, but I think controlling what you can is definitely a great way to make a positive impact.
Something years ago that you really made me change how the type of social media that I consume, was I saw this talk about, if, at the time I think it was Twitter, back before X, but at the time it was saying, well, if Twitter was a warehouse where all those people were saying the things they say, would you go in there? Like if it was a big room and everyone was at those tables saying the things that are said, would you even go into that place? And I thought, oh my gosh, so starting to look at my social media, like if that were a physical place, would I go to that physical place? And so often, no.
Yeah.
What it's doing to my relationships, what it's doing, so that really helped me to kind of like be very think critically about what I was consuming.
Yeah. I've never heard that before. I love that. I feel like that's such a good way to check in with yourself. Like, is that somewhere I would actually go, or a conversation I'd actually engage in? I like that.
Yeah. Imagine a bar, or some kind of a club, and
Yeah.
those people are saying those things. I'm like, oh my gosh, half those people I wouldn't even want to be in the same building, So, I think that's just, we are touched and changed by what we consume.
Mm-hmm.
And then that it's the content, then the non-essential alerts, all the clickbait and all the things that get our attention. And even when we are, the special little dings our phone have, sometimes maybe evaluating what you're doing with that. You don't want to be at, someplace with all your friends and be on your phone.
Definitely. I recently learned how to keep my phone on Do Not Disturb, but my family's calls can still come through. But that's been very nice to just in the evenings put it on Do Not Disturb and just, be in the moment of whatever it is that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Even if it's just watching a movie or, sharing a meal. It's important to, I think, have that time away and like we've said before, being intentional.
And being present with the people you're present with.
Definitely.
We're in a very unique time in human history that you have to actually work to be present with the people you're present with.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
It is wild.
The next pillar is the pace of life, or the calendar calm. What are some things and I know you lead a busy life. What are some things you do to keep that calendar calm?
I feel like this maybe kind of goes back a little bit to boundaries, but I'm definitely the type of person that I need this might sound a little too much, but like I need that intentional time to recharge or like refill my cup.
Absolutely.
And I love to socialize. I love to spend time with friends, family, but it's also really important to me to know like, okay, this is my day to just like, do whatever it is, to just recharge, take time for me. A lot of people talk about it like the oxygen mask on a plane, right? Like I have to put mine on before I can help anybody else.
Absolutely.
And that's how I kind of view that. And so making sure that, when I'm scheduling things, that there are days or times where it's like, okay, this is my time to recharge. And I know maybe that's not always possible. But maybe even it's just like a small scale thing. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be a day or a week, but just being very intentional.
Absolutely. And I think the way to do that is to respect the calendar time that is maybe your personal time, or maybe you and I know both when we do our therapy calendars, we like to stack our clients on days and then have days off.
Yes.
Do a 10 or 12-hour day and then have a day completely off. And I think that makes me a better therapist.
I would agree. To me, I just view it as like, this is my time for my brain to just be off a little bit.
Those brain breaks.
Definitely.
I think brain breaks are more important than anyone ever, I have very few clients that actually know the importance of a brain break.
It's hard. It's hard to be, like you said, like making sure that you are doing these things. It's a lot, and I think it takes a lot to even just get to this point. But I do think the more you can actually try to schedule these things, the better impact on brain and mental health and just overall well-being.
So taking your calendar and putting those, those breaks, however that looks like on your calendar, you can fill those out first. Don't compromise on those. And then one thing that you said when we were talking about the boundaries, you said that your dad said, no is a full sentence.
Yes.
And that I'm like, that's a great way to look at no.
Yeah. Because I think there's this maybe expectation that, oh, you have to explain it or you have to give the reason behind it. And you really don't, right? And it's not a, disrespectful thing. It's not it's just, hey, sorry, no, like I can't, right? And that's okay. Like you don't have to give the reason, you don't have to give the explanation, and that's enough. So it's hard, but it is true. No is a full sentence. Absolutely.
And then the last one, those little micro rituals we do to reinforce our life when we're building our calm, we're curating a calm life. Some of those little things, and those are those anxiety tools, but also, those are the little things we do. What are some of the things that are your favorites when you work with people?
Going back to, I really do like a lot of the like polyvagal therapy stuff, just because I think sometimes in moments where you're in high stress or anxiety situations, just knowing that there are things that you can do. So we've talked about the cold therapy, we've talked about the something sour. I am personally a big fan of, breathing techniques like 4-7-8. But again, that's not for everybody. But I think too, things that we've also talked about in the past, scaling. So making sure that you're checking in with yourself. And yeah, just knowing what works for you, I think is important.
Well, and if you go to all the trouble to build a wellness area in your home or a calm space, use it. Take the time to go there.
Right.
Take the time to just go take a quick sit there. You figured out a way, you figure out how to take the time to do a lot of things in your life. Make that the priority to actually go to that calm space, and even if it's 2 minutes.
Right. Definitely.
Rush your calm. You have to rush your calm. But those are really our calm code pillars. The physical calm, the relational calm, the digital calm, the calendar calm, and those micro rituals. So next episode, what we're going to talk about is, what would you look like if you were actually, what does your calm identity look like if you actually do this thing, how does that change you, and what do you think that looks like in your life?
I'm excited.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on The Therapist's Couch, presented by the Sozo Wellness Institute. We hope today's conversation offered you insight, inspiration, and a sense of connection on your journey toward authentic living. If you found value in this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing it with someone who might benefit. To continue the conversation and access additional services, follow us on Instagram or TikTok at the.therapists.couch or visit our website at sozowellnessinstitute.com. Until next time, please be well.